What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is the 2023 Mazda CX-50 Turbo. So about the CX-50, well, Mazda will tell you that this is not a replacement for the CX-5. It is being sold alongside the CX-5, which did also just get a refresh for the 2022 model year. But in many ways, I think this is kind of the next generation of the CX-5, and it certainly has grown. And so it's not quite as big as the CX-9, so it still is compact SUV size as far as its classification. It's not a mid-size, but it has grown a lot. So it's 5.7 inches longer on a 4.6 inch longer wheelbase. It's also 3 inches wider now, in addition to being an inch taller. And you also have better ground clearance here with the CX-50 as well, which is why they're kind of leaning into the off-road thing with this a little bit. It has an off-road mode, and you have a more aggressive and more rugged look than you had on the CX-5. So you have 8.6 inches of ground clearance here versus the 7.9 you have on a CX-5. So I think the looks though are really nice. You know, it's kind of evolved this beautiful styling aesthetic that Mazda has, but combined it with this rugged thing and made it look a little more outdoorsy. But I think it's easily the most beautiful looking vehicle in this segment by a long shot. It just really looks sharp. I love those headlights there, which have those LED DRLs that are kind of curved but kind of angular at the same time. I also love how the grille really comes out to a point there, and it's just nicely shaped and very three-dimensional. It just looks really cool. I also like the little turn signals you have integrated into the lower part of the front bumper there. A little bit different, but I think that also looks really good. Also, I have to mention that you know, this car does come in this brand new desert sand color, which might be not to everyone's taste. I'm personally not a huge fan of it, but you can still get these in like the beautiful signature soul red color that Mazda offers, and many other, you know, beautiful colors as well. But anyway, coming down to the sides here, you have 20-inch wheels here on these upper turbo trims and also on the top trims of the non-turbo version. I think they're really nice to fill out these wheel wells, and you know, the body cladding also is fairly restrained, so that I think it also looks pretty good. But I think my favorite thing about the side profile of the CX-50 here is that you have these hips on the car. The way that it kind of bulges out for the fenders, both in the front and in the back there, it really is like, especially the back end's like this Coke bottle kind of shape almost, with the way it really comes out and almost like a wide body appearance to it. I think it's a really cool design touch, and compared to all the other boxy slab-sided crossovers out there that look a lot blander, I think this really has a lot of visual interest with just how three-dimensional the shape is here on the sides. Then going out to the back, it's also very attractive. You have those LED taillights there that echo the same theme you have from the headlights here, and I also like how there's a little bit of a rounded edge to that back hatch as well. And you do have some fake vents there to try and make it look a little more off-roady in the lower part of the rear bumper there. But you know, overall, I think that they just really did a really good job of keeping it tasteful and elegant, but still, again, giving it a little bit of a aggressive tone to it here with you know, the off-road kind of vibe. And so overall, I think that they did a really good job here with the styling on the CX-50. All right, so start up and go for a drive. The CX-50 here has Mazda's new key, which is a nice key. It's interesting though how it has buttons only there on the side and nothing on the front or the back of it. But, you know, it still is fairly thin, and just a nice looking key. Feels pretty nice too with the satin plastic. But of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start here in the CX-50s. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. If you're curious to hear about the interior in the CX-50, my wife and I just did a full in-depth interior review on this vehicle. So I'll link that above. You can go watch that if you want to hear all our thoughts on this interior. But overall, it's a very nice place to be. This new, you know, next generation Mazda interior is really just so striking as far as materials. The technology is really nice. Without going overboard, you know, it might not be the highest tech thing out there, but it is certainly, I think, one of the nicest, and feels like a luxury car almost in here with just how nice everything is. But definitely check out that interior video for all the details. All right, so setting off here in the 2023 CX-50. So the first thing you notice about the CX-50 is, well, you're sitting up, you know, pretty nice and high here, you know, because it is about an inch higher, and you also have almost an inch more ground clearance than a CX-5. You know, it does feel like a bigger vehicle. I think that's the first thing I noticed is driving this, I almost felt like I was in a CX-9 with just how big it feels, you know, being 3 inches wider, being up a little higher, and also being longer. I just really felt those larger dimensions over a CX-5. It certainly feels like class up over a CX-5 as far as its size, in my opinion at least. You know, it's not hard to drive or anything, but it just, you feel like you're definitely driving a bigger vehicle than the average compact SUV these days. But visibility is really good. You have nice thin A-pillars, you know, good view forward, and view out of the back is also really good. One other thing though that I did notice very early on is the steering. The steering is super heavy. Like, I've driven supercars and sports cars with lighter steering than this. You know, I think Mazda wants to give it this weighty, high-quality kind of feeling, but I think they went a little overboard with the steering personally. Other Mazdas also have pretty heavy steering, but this seems to be even a tiny bit heavier than some of those. And, you know, I don't mind it personally. I'm an enthusiast. You know, I don't mind doing a workout whenever I'm doing aggressive steering. But, you know, for the average crossover buyer, I don't think that you're going to want to be toning up your arms every time you're, you know, turning the wheel in this thing. And it really is unnecessarily heavy. I don't think it adds anything as far as, you know, a steering feel or handling or anything like that. It actually makes it feel a little heavier as a result overall for the vehicle because of how the steering kind of resists changes of direction because it's just so heavy. I mean, it's not, you know, a deal breaker. If you really love everything about this, I think you could live with it, but just seems unnecessarily heavy. But other than that, all the other driving inputs are really nice. You have very nice natural throttle response. The brakes also are nice where they have a good amount of travel to them, and they're a little stiff if you're used to other cars' brake pedals. But Mazda does that intentionally because they want you to use your calf muscle, which is the stronger muscle, instead of your shin muscle to try and modulate the brake pedal. And so they say over long-term driving, it's going to be a little bit more comfortable with the way they set that up. Mazda's obsessing over you know, how your body interacts with a vehicle, and so they do all these advanced studies as far as how to make it a more comfortable drive. And so that's, you know, the reason why they have that. The ride is also very nice here. Even on these 20-inch wheels, which don't have super big sidewalls on these tires, still a nice, soft, comfortable ride here. But I'm going to go ahead and put it up into a sport mode. It has a sport mode and an off-road mode, which I'll talk a little bit more about the off-road mode in a minute. But put it into the sport mode here, and let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Pretty responsive. Pulls nice and strongly. It's not the hot rod you might be thinking it would be, considering this is one of the more powerful vehicles in its segment. And it's only about 3,900 pounds too, so it's not really overly heavy for this segment either. But the way they tune this, it's punchy, but it's not going to be quite as quick as some of the others because it runs a 6-speed automatic transmission, with many of the others, almost everything these days running, you know, some type of 8-speed automatic, or you know, some have CVTs as well. So I'm thankful we have a real automatic still. But those 6 gears mean it's a lot more spaced out with the power, and so it does those accelerations in broader strokes than what you have with many other vehicles. But it's a good amount of power. It's still, this turbo trim has the 2.5 liter turbo 4-cylinder that Mazda uses. It's 257 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque, which is far and away more torque than anything else in this segment. And it's very strong. 0 to 60 is going to be around the low 6-second range. It feels very punchy though, especially whenever you have it in, you know, good gear and it's right there on boost, ready to go. It really takes off nicely, and you can, by the way, those numbers are on 93 octane, but if you were to run 87, which it can run totally fine, so especially these days with expensive gas prices, if you want to run 87, you can. You just give up a little bit of horsepower. It's 227 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque there, with, you know, that 87, but still should be very strong power. The turbo still is going to give you lots of great punch around town, even with that 87 octane, which is great. But we're on this a little bit of a rougher road here, and generates a lot of road noise typically, but in this vehicle, like most Mazdas, they're so well insulated so that you really don't hear much. It really is so good. I mean, the CX-5 was already like basically best in class as far as its interior being nice and quiet, but this I think might even be a tiny bit better than that. Regardless though, I mean, it's going to be way quieter than your average RAV4 or something like that, which has so much road noise. This really isolates you so much better from the outside. But anyway, we're coming up some corners here that I always take, and let's see how the CX-50 handles. A little bit of screeching from the tires there. And it handles itself pretty well. So I think there's a few things that go into making this feel not quite as good as a CX-5, in my opinion, as far as handling goes. I've already put about 273 miles on this car over my week with it, and it does handle itself very well. So one of the things that does help it is the fact you have this G vectoring control technology, which is essentially a brake-based torque vectoring type sensation where it will brake the inside rear wheel to help with turn-in and help the vehicle to have a little bit less body roll. And it does seem to work very well. I mean, it doesn't feel artificial or anything. I can't even really tell when it's working most of the time, but it does work a little bit more in sport mode here to give you a little bit of a quicker turn-in and feel a little bit sportier in corners. But I think the thing that I feel here in the CX-50 is one, you have the higher ground clearance. You know, it's 8.6 inches of ground clearance, you know, which is a lot more than what you get on the CX-5. And, you know, so that I think gives you a little bit more lean. And also, I think they just set this up to be a little bit softer, since again, they're kind of going for a little bit of an off-road kind of vibe here with the CX-50. And so it just leans into corners a little bit more. It also, because of its larger size and the fact that it does weigh about 50 pounds or so, which is not much, but, you know, a little bit more than a CX-5, all those things contribute into this feeling good around corners. It still handles great. And I would still take this handling over basically anything else in the segment that isn't a Mazda. But, you know, it's not as good as the CX-5 in my opinion, but it still handles very well. And I think if it had a little bit of a lighter steering, you know, then I'd be able to maybe, it would feel a little bit dartier, a little bit more eager and agile to, you know, dive into corners. Whereas, you know, right now it feels a little bit like it doesn't like doing it, but it does do it, and does do it very well, especially on these 20-inch wheels. You know, it might even be a little softer if you went for some of the smaller wheels with their, you know, larger sidewall tires. And in sport mode here, it will also keep the RPMs higher here and keep you in a lower gear. And so it makes it a little more eager to want to just, you know, take off, and a little bit more responsive as far as the powertrain is concerned, which is very much appreciated. And so, I mean, this thing does hustle very well for what it is. And so, I mean, I can't judge this like a sports car. It still is one of the best handling things in its segment, and I still really enjoy the way that it drives. It's also important to note that all CX-50s come with all-wheel drive, so that means, you know, they all have this off-road mode, which gives you, you know, a different type of traction control programming, and, you know, just modifies everything to give you a little bit better traction off-road. And so it's nice that it has that. Mazda also has a very good all-wheel drive system, so that, you know, it does a really good job of divvying up the power to give you, you know, the right traction at the right wheel, and, you know, make sure you get that good forward momentum. But they didn't want to go overboard with the off-road stuff, they said, because they say that they can only do so much, and they wanted to really focus on the on-road driving characteristics, because they said that, you know, you do most of your driving, even if you are going to go camping or hiking or something like that, you know, a large majority of your driving is still going to be on normal roads. It's just that very last mile or whatever where you actually are off the beaten path. So they didn't want to go crazy with the off-road stuff like some of the other companies out there will do. But, you know, so I mean, it's great that it has that. Also, turbo models here get a tow mode, which, for example, will use that torque vectoring system to help, you know, realize that there's less weight over the front end and give you, you know, some better handling characteristics whenever you are towing a trailer, which is cool. Speaking of towing here, the turbo models will do 3,500 pounds, which is more than a CX-5. CX-5 used to max out at 2,000 pounds. Now, if you go for a non-turbo CX-50 here, you do get a 2,000 pound tow rating still. So it's only these turbo ones where you get that extra capability of the 3,500 pound tow rating. But it is nice that you have a little bit of increased capability here in the CX-50 as well. And now we're out on the highway here in the CX-50. It's a really nice highway cruiser. I actually did about 200 miles on the highway yesterday in this vehicle, and it's really nice. The only thing that I don't love about the highway cruising is the fact that you have, again, that heavier steering, and whenever you're, you know, behind the wheel here for over an hour and you're, you know, making these little lane corrections, you know, it's, again, just like, you know, I don't need heavy steering for that. So that's the only thing, though. Otherwise, you know, it's a nice, you know, quiet ride here, even at highway speeds. It's, you know, pretty refined, and especially whenever you have this awesome stereo going, you don't hear any of that road noise really, and so, you know, it's a really nice cruiser. My only other little complaint is with the safety tech. So the CX-50s, you know, come with a ton of safety tech already, you know, so you have automatic emergency braking, blind spot monitoring, you know, all the basics that you are going to want. And then, you know, so this one here has the adaptive cruise control system, which does, you know, the lane following a little bit, and that's the component that I have a little bit of an issue with, because it does have this little steering wheel icon that pops up on your gauge cluster here, and you can turn it on to help you do the lane keep assist. And over, you know, those 2 hours of highway driving, it really didn't do much. It's more like, you know, it'll do a lane alert, basically, of like, hey, you're crossing over the lanes. But even that was very slow and very late to give me an alert. And I would be like, just to test it out, I would sit on the line and it would still just be like, yep, no problems here. And so I'm like, all right, cool, I'm on my own. And, you know, I mean, Mazda said that they do want to focus on the driver's inputs more so than on, you know, what the car thinks it should be doing. And I respect that as a driver. I don't want a car that's overreaching. Subaru system, for example, is really overreaching a lot of times, and there's a few other systems out there that can be kind of annoying. I'm glad that this is not annoying, but if you're someone who's, getting one of these and you're wanting to have, really good technology, and, you want a car that basically steers itself, this is not that car. This one's not going to be doing that for you. I mean, none of these systems in any of these vehicles that this competes with are hands-free yet, but, a lot of the others will really help you a lot with steering. But all the other adaptive cruise stuff worked very well with, slowing down for cars in front of me and all that kind of stuff. And one other thing that I really did like was that whenever I was running navigation through Apple Maps with the wireless Apple CarPlay, it actually gave me the directions on the head-up display, which is super nice, because a lot of times the head-up display only shows you nav in other vehicles whenever you're using the car's, navigation system, not the one on your phone. But this uses those phone directions and still puts them on the head-up display, which is really great. And so I love that it does that. The only unfortunate thing about the head-up display is that with polarized sunglasses, I can still barely see it. So I honestly didn't really have much of a chance to enjoy it. But, if you're not using sunglasses, it is going to be nice to have that. It'll show you, a few other things as well, like the speed limit and stuff, which is handy whenever you're out on the open road as well. But anyway, yeah, I've already been driving this vehicle for a whole week. I've put 285 miles on it now. In addition to those about 200 or so miles on the highway, I also did, about 60 or 70 miles here around town, running errands and just living with the vehicle as well. And it was really nice to live with. Again, aside from, that safety tech and the heavy steering, I had no other complaints. It was really a nice driving vehicle and just so nice to live with. I really love this stereo. That was just one thing I really savored the entire week whenever I was driving around here. But the last two things to mention here are the fuel economy and the pricing here of the CX-50. So first off, fuel economy. Now, these are rated at 23 mpg in the city, 29 on the highway, and 25 combined. So in my driving here, 286 miles, I've been getting about 25.3 mpg. So I did some filming of this interior, so now it's telling me 24.8, but I was a little over 25 mpg. Now, I didn't really do the combined figure. I would say I did, more highway driving for sure than I did in the city. So I was hoping to get beyond that combined figure of 25, maybe get up to, 26 or 27, a little bit short of that. But, all things considered, not bad. I typically, in my week with the vehicle, I'll get 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating whenever I'm just driving around town and stuff. So, with this, being maybe 1 or 2 mpg less than I was expecting to get here, I'm still pretty happy with 25 mpg for, a mix of mostly highway and some city driving mixed in there. It is worth noting, though, if you compare this fuel economy to some of the others in the compact SUV segment that are, again, smaller, not quite as nice or as powerful, but some of those will do, into the 30s for their highway fuel economy. So it's not going to be the most fuel efficient out there currently, but, it's just going to be kind of par for the course as far as having something with a turbo on it and having as much power as this has. Then the last thing to mention here is the pricing in the CX-50. So for a non-turbo, base model, they'll be starting around $28,000 here. And then this one I'm driving as tested is about $42,775 for this fully loaded. This is the top turbo premium plus trim here. And, I think that that's very competitive pricing because honestly, at least towards the upper end here, it's only about $2,000 more expensive than the CX-5. And yet you get, a little bit more interior space in most aspects. You have a larger car overall. You have a much nicer interior than the CX-5 for sure. You have some really nice improvements here that I think are definitely worth the extra $2,000 for sure. And it's just also the newer vehicle. The CX-5's been around for a long time. This is a brand new thing, brand new, generation, and it's going to be, I think the one you're going to want to go with, if it's only a $2,000 price difference. And so, just one other thing to, keep in mind as far as that pricing. Now, as far as which trim I would go with personally, I think that I like having the turbo motor because I feel like this car would be a little slow feeling with the other motor, the base motor. So I would want the turbo, I think, just to give me sufficient power for what I personally, want in something, as a family vehicle. I still want decent power to merge and stuff, and so I think I'd want the turbo. But I think I could go for the premium trim because that, is about $2,000 less expensive, and all you really lose is the 360-degree camera. You lose the wireless charging pad and the rear heated seats. All things that I think are worth living with, for $2,000 less, and that puts this, right under $41,000. for one of those instead of about, close to 43. So I think that's a little bit of a better value. But of course, it's just going to come down to, what exactly you want as far as features and all that. And it's nice that, some features like a heated steering wheel aren't only reserved for the top trims. A lot of those nice features are in the lower trims as well. But, trying to compare this to competitors, that's the one other thing I usually do in these videos, but it's kind of hard for this one because this is a good bit larger than most of the other stuff this competes with, but it's also smaller than all the other mid-size SUVs still, so I can't really compare it to those. And price-wise, this is still very much the same as most of the other compact SUVs out there. I already liked the CX-5. I thought the CX-5 was my favorite in this segment. I thought it was one of the best in its class, and so this just basically is a better CX-5, a newer CX-5, and so for that reason, I just think that this is still kind of retaining that top spot. Again, it doesn't handle maybe quite as good as the CX-5, but aside from that, everything else is better in this over the CX-5. And so I would say that this is now my new favorite in the compact SUV segment. Overall, just a lot to like here in the CX-50. Mazda did a great job here, like they always do. I mean, you have just a quieter ride, a more comfortable ride. The most power you get in this segment here in the CX-50. The great interior, the great tech. If they only made this touchscreen touch capable all the time instead of just whenever you're parked, I would absolutely love it. Because that's the one other little thing that kind of annoyed me, was the fact that you can do the touchscreen thing for Apple CarPlay whenever you're parked, but whenever you're moving, that you still got to use this controller wheel to use Apple CarPlay. It's the only thing that kind of annoyed me during my week here, and the only little other minor thing that isn't perfect about the CX-50. But otherwise, I absolutely love everything about it. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the CX-50. Let me know your thoughts out in the comments below. Huge thanks to Mazda for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.